What is heaven? I think that's an interesting question to ponder. Different people will say different things. So heaven sort of implies an afterlife potentially. And I'll just start by saying that I'm sort of going to speak about this from a mixture of a deist perspective and a perspective that's sort of reflective of A Course in Miracles, which is sort of a New Age Christianity, very liberal Christianity, sort of uses Christian language. So what is heaven? From a traditional Christian perspective, it's a place where, good people go when they die. Those who are saved, or whatever language they want to use. In other religions, this, different sorts of narratives exist. Buddhists might call it nirvana. In A Course in Miracles, it actually says heaven is now. It says the bad things we see are illusions. This is my understanding of it from A Course in Miracles. And heaven is here now in truth. And that's from, I believe, section 24 of the Manual for Teachers. I think towards the last paragraph, I believe, if my memory serves me. From a deist perspective, heaven might be, again, more like the traditional Christian perspective. Aikido, the writings of Morihei Ueshiba, in the book The Art of Peace, John Stevens, who translates the material, I believe, talks about, translates, I guess you could say, something of what Ueshiba says, which, I believe it's something along the lines of that, we can potentially create heaven on earth. And Aikido can be one vehicle for helping to do that, to establish heaven on earth. I believe that's the term, in order to establish heaven on earth, I think is how the quote roughly starts. But what is heaven then? From a quantum perspective, potentially whatever you believe heaven might be, then perhaps that is what heaven shall be, again, from a quantum perspective, which is sort of a branch of physics, which blends with metaphysics, perhaps. So I think it's an interesting question to ponder. Of course, from an atheist perspective, which I don't really, I've believed in the past, but I definitely don't currently, is, some people would say, we just turn into dust. There is no such thing as heaven. We live on earth. Life's tough, and then you die. And I think that's a little bit sad, just that thought. But I guess if they're right, you just turn into dust, it's not going to matter to you. But I think that's a downer, personally. I don't think that's as fun or as exciting as the potential for heaven, whether it's here right now, something we need to establish on earth, or someplace that we go after we die on earth. But whatever it is, so this is I'm talking sort of from a, theological, spiritual perspective, but let's even say, in deism is sort of in between, what I mentioned about Aikido. So let's say, my understanding of deism is, God put us here, he left us alone, and it's up to us to create a good earth to live on. And, with Aikido, the founder, Morihei Ueshiba, may have indicated that, it's up to us to try and establish heaven on earth. There's multiple ways to do that. And, doing Aikido and sharing that knowledge may be one way to help, hasten that. And then, from an atheistic perspective, again, I have a hard time relating to that, so I'm not going to actually say much about that. But I'm sure if anyone's a decent human being, they're not going to say that we shouldn't try to help humans experience happiness and to create a good place on earth to live. And the term utopia, I think, is almost a word that is like a secularization of heaven. It's a secular way of referring to heaven potentially. It's non-theological, non-spiritual. So utopia. But I question if we could even ever have a utopia without a spiritual component. And if it was a utopia with a spiritual component, then that might just be heaven. So, again, I think it's a fun question to think about. And sometimes my own personal opinions on the matter are more solid than other times. And sometimes I sort of just prefer to be honest with myself and not take a strong position. So where do you stand? I think it's fun to think about. Where do you stand, though? Anyway, I'll end it there. I don't want to bore you anymore. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Watch my other videos, visit my websites, and have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon, or night, whenever and wherever you may be.